Let's take a breath together. So I was made aware that some folks are having some challenges on Facebook and Zoom with the sound. Um, Not sure what that's about, but I did what I knew that might be affecting it, so hopefully it's better. Um, Technology is always an interesting dance. So this is Easter morning, and that means, and to many people, it means absolutely nothing. And that's okay. And that's the journey I want to talk about this morning, is how do we make it okay that the path keeps changing, that our understanding keeps changing. And I also want to bring our attention to how much doesn't seem to be changing. Last night, I'm just flipping TV channels, and there it is one more time. I'm pretty sure I have watched it every year for 61 years. The 1956 Ten Commandments. Now, I'm still confused why they play that this time of year. I just know that they do. And I was really, how you see something over and over and over, and all of a sudden you see it with new eyes and with new ears. And part of what was happening, most of what was happening in that movie, is happening right now. It's happening today. It's just we're wearing different outfits, driving different vehicles, and we have a different battleground. I caught this little, wow, did he really say that moment, where Ramses was talking about his power. And what he said was, I have become prosperous because I have hardened myself to care. Did you catch that? I have become prosperous because I have hardened myself against caring. How many of us are suffering from toxic individualism? That that our idea of prosperity comes at someone else's expense. That we're operating from this idea that there's only so much, and I have to get mine, and I don't really care if you get yours or not. In fact, I think I should probably take yours to make sure I get mine. Some people call that capitalism. I don't know that it is or it isn't. This is not a talk about economics. But what I do know is that is keeping us apart. It is keeping us sick. It is keeping us limited from our good. The other thing that I really noticed last night was that when Ramses sent out the decree for the firstborn to be killed, what he set in motion was killing his own son. What we do to other people, we do to ourselves. It's inevitable. I was reading this morning in Dr. Howard Thurman's Jesus and the Disenfranchised. And he's talking about hatred and whose hatred is more righteous. And is there such a thing as a righteous hatred? But history is filled with righteous hatred. It's filled with it. This morning we're looking at the path less traveled. And perhaps the path less traveled requires us to first recognize the path we're on. Right? Who do we want to crucify? Because it's not lost on me that this morning many, if not most, churches and spiritual centers are talking about the resurrection. And we spend so little time talking about what we're resurrecting from. Right? Jesus was misquoted. His last words on the cross were not, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" That is a mistranslation of the Greek from the Aramaic. What he actually said, according to George Lambsa, who grew up speaking the same Aramaic language, is, my God, for this I was spared." That's a very different final word than "you have forsaken me." Jesus' message to us, his example to us, is that we are not our bodies. That we are immortal beings traveling in a finite mortal container. He knew his entire journey who he was. Do we know who we are? Or are we falling into the Ramses thought process of hurting people who hurt us only to, in the end, hurt ourselves a little bit more? Because I think that's the message that's available to us, is to really, Jesus was all about oneness. All about oneness. His whole message, while everyone around him was making him separate, his whole message is, I'm not separate. I and the Father are one. What you see in me is in you. We are all one. Over and over again. That was Jesus' message. And he was crucified for it. He was crucified because he didn't play the earth game the way it was set up. Jesus was perfectly at peace and comfortable hanging out with the highest of high echelon, the prophecies and the pharaohs, and he was equally comfortable hanging out with the hookers and the thieves. See, he didn't separate us based on how we showed up in the world. He understood that he was one with everybody, and he didn't get caught up in people's behaviors. I think about today being the anniversary of the assassination of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King in 1968. And how that is a crucifixion. And how the continued movement for nonviolence and peace and equity and justice is a continuous resurrection. And how do we bring this into our own life? What is happening for you where there is unforgiveness? Because I'm absolutely certain that it is our wounds of unforgiveness that create any desire to crucify ourselves or someone else. It is that unhealed woundedness that seeks retribution. Our affirmation this morning was about taking the road less traveled, the path less traveled. We can't actually say the road less traveled. That would be a copyright violation. Right? But are we willing to take the path less traveled of forgiveness? To call a thing and then let it go. To truly transform those wounds within us from places of resentment to portals of peace and love. Are we willing to do that? All last month we talked about transformation, ending with true transformation renders the previous version unrecognizable. Are we willing to pick up our cross, our resentments, our hatred, our separations, and walk ourselves to the top of the mountain, to the point of self-awareness where we can actually see spiritually, the top of the spiritual mountain, where we can see our oneness with all of life? And are we willing to crucify, lovingly crucify, that inner liar? Are we willing to nail that to a tree, to let it go, to truly be transformed and allow the Christ consciousness within us, the truth of us, the us that the angry, hurtful, resentful us has been hiding? Are we willing to allow that to resurrect? Because as I understand the story, the crucifixion was a prerequisite to the resurrection. What's keeping you from resurrecting? What needs to die to set you free? What I can promise you from the certainty of my own experience is that every ouch, on the other side of every resentment, on the other side of every I hate you, is an amazing hallelujah. It may change nothing about them. It will change everything about you. Your freedom, your path is about setting you free. If we would do our social justice work from a perception, from an intention of freedom for all, I think we'll get there more quickly. I know that Dr. King knew that. He knew that. And I imagine him spending many, many nights on his knees forgiving and forgiving and forgiving again those that brutally abused him. What I admire most about Dr. King, what I strive for the most, is the resilience. That part within him that in the confines of the Birmingham jail went inward and loved his captors and told the truth. Can we do that? Can we use these teachings? Can we look at our own material? We believe in the eternality, the immortality, and the continuity of the individual soul forever and ever expanding without going to separation. Because in that statement, Dr. Holmes is not talking about the separation of the individual. He's talking about an individualized experience. He's not talking about separation. We believe that heaven is within us and that we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. You can be on an island surrounded by water and have no idea that there's any water available. Right? You got to go to the edge of the island to find the water. Are we willing to go to the edge of our belief systems to find our magnificence? Are we willing to go to the edge of our comfort zone and then step completely outside of it so that we can experience our magnificence? Because I'm telling you, your magnificence, this forever and ever expanding, requires us to get outside of our comfort zone. You can't stay all nice, neat, and comfy in the cocoon and expand. We got to bust out. And that's going to look different for everybody. Heaven is within. Quit looking for it in somebody else. It's already in you. This activity of looking for it outside of ourselves keeps us from it. Briefly going back to the Ten Commandments last night, the whole theme through much of this movie was either blaming God or thanking God for doing something for you. It was the rare moment in this where it was recognized that God is acting through us. Right? And so pay attention. Where in times of stress, in times of great discomfort, where is your God? Is it a male God outside of you fixed in the cloud that is going to save you? Or is it an assurance that the intelligence of creation itself is within you and you already are the answers that you need? That's the example of Jesus. Our teachings teach that he is the example, not the exception. The example of Jesus is he knew his magnificence and he never wavered. Never once. Did he have human moments? Absolutely. In the Garden of Gethsemane, twice. He saw what was coming. And twice in that garden, he's like, yo, God, if there is another way to do this, I'm all for it because I see what's coming. And I'm not sure that I want to do that, right? He followed his spiritual path even when it was uncomfortable in his physical being. And I can only imagine the discomfort of his physical being, if the stories are even remotely accurate. It was horrific. And yet, he never wavered. That's what's available to us. When we really know, when we have this part of this statement, where we awaken to our spiritual magnificence, discovering the creative power of thought, then we will manifest a world that works for everyone, because we will understand that our thought impacts everybody. And the whole dis-ease of toxic individualism is healed when we think and live in oneness. When we stop to consider, how does this impact the whole? Just like, I'm going to wrap up with this. Just like in the middle of the night, when you're getting up, walking around, and that conversation is happening between your brain and your big toe to turn on the light. Because your big toe knows it's about to experience something that no part of your body wants to experience. And we argue, and we argue, until our toe finds the couch. And then the whole body. It's as simple as surrendering to, sure, I'll turn on that light. Yes, I'll look at this. Yes, I will forgive and see this person in a different light. Illuminate your consciousness. And forgiveness will become easy. Spiritual growth will become easy. Just turn on the light. Resurrect the light in you. Let's take this into prayer. And so what I know is that there is only one infinite, ever-present allness. That it is having its way, unfolding itself as life this day. That it is the singular source out of which everything is created. That it is so much more than what we experience in this physical realm. It is the very source of everything that we see, feel, and experience. And so I know that being created out of it, by it, to be it, I must be that in form. And I know that what is true of me is true of all life. All life. All beings. The space between. The cranky technology. The seeming internet failures. All the path less traveled. All the infinite unfolding. And so I simply allow it to be perfect in my experience. To let go of all the stories I'm making up. And I use this moment as a model for life. To let go of making up the stories and to move into an awareness that life is simply unfolding itself. To let that be my experience. To surrender. And so it is with deep gratitude deep, deep gratitude. That I surrender into this infinite allness. That I let go, knowing that it's already done, it's already complete. I let it be. And so it is.